You're going to love learning from this convention. It's out of this world. Hey there, we're going to take a look at a convention of a really unique group of people because something I've discovered as a conference MC and meeting facilitator is that, boy, there is a group for just about everybody. And we're going to take a look behind the scenes at the Flat Earth Convention and find out some really unique things they did that we can learn from when you're putting on an event like a retreat, a good meeting, or a convention or conference. We're going to take an especially close look at why they're doing what they're doing and how they're doing it, make some suggestions for changes or improvements, see what we can learn as we take a look at the Flat Earth Convention. Well, hi there. My name is Josh Freeberg, and I am a meeting facilitator, conference MC, and a certified exchange guide. And what I do is I take a close look at how people gather, right, when they come together for a conference or convention. And in particular, one of the things I care a lot about is learning how to flatten the room, right? That is that we don't have... I try to keep people off of a big, high, elevated stage behind a platform with lots of prestige and posture, and instead elevate everyone so that all voices are heard and that we are connecting and collaborating together in the room. I think something really special happens when we do that. And I'm fascinated by events where people have very unique things in common and have yet found each other and come together to create a conference. And so today we're going to look at one of those groups. We're going to look at a group of the Flat Earth Convention. They started meeting in 2017. They're very proud of that. They've got a really fascinating MC. We're going to take a look at some clips from that, from how he is managing the room, and I think learn a lot from that. And then I'm going to make some suggestions along the way that, to be perfectly honest, I'm surprised they hadn't hit upon, but we'll make those suggestions all the same. But let's jump into a few of these clips and see what we can learn about how to conduct a really good conference from some of the things that they're doing, maybe some of the things they're not doing, and that we could use in our events. It should be a fun time.
This is a day that's going to be etched in history. It's a quest for truth, and it can seem crazy, but all of us laughed at this topic, including myself. This is probably the most ridiculous thing I ever thought that I'd be doing, and here I am organizing the Flat Earth International Conference, but I'm not laughing anymore.
1, 2, 3, we're not crazy!
That's perfect. Oh, that's so good. Okay, so here's what's really brilliant about that is they literally leaned into the thing that's like the elephant in the room, right? Is like, hey, are we all crazy? The world thinks we're crazy. We're getting, we've got a billboard on the side of the road. There's been a bunch of news, shows about this crazy group getting together. And rather than like hide from that, is they leaned into it, right? And what they did is actually created like a mini ritual of coming together. They're in front of the billboard and they're yelling this thing that they all have in common, this feeling that deep down inside that they all have, that like, hey, I'm not crazy. And then they yell it out together. And so this is really, this is cool because one of the things that's true of a really, particularly a small group, but any group that you're bringing together is they're like, oh, it's so nice to be in a room of people like me. Right. And so, my brother and I coach dental practice owners, and it's so often that when they come together, they're like, oh, it's just so great to be with people who understand my world. Right. And I've been with groups of self-storage investors, right? Very unique group. And when they come together, they're like, oh, it's my people. Right. So one of the cool things you see right at the opening of this Flat Earth Conference, I think is so smart, is to lean into this thing that they all have in common, particularly if you can grab around an idea of a feeling that they all share. So when you're designing a conference or a convention, is there some sort of like ritual or some sort of like memory that you can create? This one's specifically located to a location, right, that they're going to physically remember. It was awkward to go drive to the side of the highway and get out of your car and maybe jump the barrier and get out in the grass and then take this big group photo, but it was a moment and it was worth the effort. So how do we create moments and create experiences for people to come together and to feel like a community? And I think they started off, that's really a smart move in the midst of, and this was their first conference as I understand it. I think that's a smart move and a great way to kick off a conference in a really unique way. All right, so this next video is one of the presenters, and I want to take a look at the room setup in particular. So let's take a look, and what I want you to do, I'm less concerned about what he's saying, more concerned about the setup of the room, how you would feel as an audience member, how you would feel as a speaker. Let's take a look at what we can find out.
Here's my problem, Mike, with that. I said, are you going to be wearing one of these NASA helmets? Are you going to be wearing a pressurized helmet? He said, yeah, absolutely, I have to, obviously, right? Well, obviously the glass is curved. So I told him, this is all part of their design. You're going to get up there and you're going to see this kind of view because it does the same thing to everybody's view who wears a motorcycle helmet or anything that's got that kind of curved glass. So he said he's going to look into trying to make sure that before he goes up.
Oh, this is interesting. So they're actually they're using two different crowd shots of different, what had to be different rooms. So this one actually you could see there's rounds. The previous video we were looking at, there was long skinny tables. So this is actually two different rooms. There's also two different light setups. So one has the house lights off and the other one has the house lights on. And so that's just, there's different purposes for each of those. And you would want to be thoughtful about how you use those. But let's keep watching to the end of the clip.
Looks through and make sure that there is no distortion. I hope so too.
Okay, no, this is driving me nuts. I have to talk about this right now. So this poor guy's got too much to do. He's got too much to manage right now, which is he's got a laptop in front of him that he has to advance the slides and everything by hand. What I would much prefer is that the slide deck is being run by a technician in the back of the room. Maybe he's got a clicker that he's using, although he was showing some video, and that can sometimes be a little tricky. You will definitely want to test that ahead of time if you've got video for a presentation. But then he's got to use a handheld mic, and he's trapped behind that podium. So I don't know if this guy's real dynamic or wants to be more engaging with his audience. I'd love to see that podium either gone or off to the side as much as we can so that there's less barriers between him and the audience, right? Because they're not gonna they're gonna feel this distance and this disconnect from him. Now, I think it's okay to be on an elevated platform, you know, a room this size. It looks like you've got about 100, 120 people there, I'm guessing, but that's okay. You know, you want to have people up a little higher so that they can see the speaker, but anything else you can do to remove barriers between the speaker and the audience is going to tend to pull the audience in a little bit better. And then I'd love to see this guy have like a wireless mic, either an over the ear or, you know, a collar, you know, something that clips to a shirt, something like that. For him, he's wearing a t-shirt, so I'd invite him to wear like a lanyard and then clip a wireless mic to that, or see if he's got a button-up shirt that he can button onto. By the way, this comes up all the time if you're emceeing an event or designing an event, and becomes particularly important for women's clothing choices, right? Because they need to think through, where am I going to clip my mic to? That's where over-the-ear mics tend to be a lot more versatile. And also, where are we going to put a belt pack? So when you're prepping speakers ahead of time, I would have said to this guy, hey, I love your t-shirt. I think it's great. Wonder if you would like a clip mic. If so, it's going to be helpful to have a button-up shirt to clip onto, or we can get you an over-the-ear mic. And then if for women, just to notice if they're going to be a clip mic, is there anything that's going to be loud or noisy, like a scarf or jewelry or anything like that may cause problems. So, but yeah, I'd love to see this guy have his hands free. He clearly is passionate about his topic and being able to, and he's referencing like shapes and stuff like that, and may want to use body language to do that. And he's a little bit limited because of his setup right here. So these are a couple things that I might change as it relates to the speaker himself. What I was saying though earlier is a lot of folks tend to get real slide heavy and have slides that have way, way, way too many words. I love that he did a video. I thought that video captured what he was trying to communicate very simply and quickly, and it was enough of a pattern break that people would have like looked, seen that, and it supported what he was saying rather than being a substitute for him communicating. So that was a really cool thing that he did there. I think there's a little more I wanted to catch on this, and we're going to talk about room setup here in just a second.
Otherwise, he could come back and say, oh, when I was up there, the earth appears to be curved. Well, again, is it the glass or is it the earth?
So they went, oh, okay. So this is far and away my least favorite room setup whenever I go to a conference. By the way, I have not been to this hotel, but I've been to hundreds of hotel conference rooms that are set up like this. And there's actually a few more people than I thought, maybe closer to 150. But here's what's going on. So look, we got the long skinny tables, and you notice that each table before you get to a center aisle, oh my gosh, it's almost the whole width. It's almost half the width of the room. So there's like 12, looks like 12 chairs behind a table before you could get out. If you're in the middle, you're stuck. You got to get past 6 or 7 people to get out and go to the bathroom. Terrible, terrible. Okay. The other thing is, you've shut down any sense of like community that's going to happen in this room. This is, all right, everybody, file in, sit down. We are going to do factory learning where you are going to be empty vessels and we're going to pour into you. And that's it. Like, file in, learn what you got to learn, and get out. And this is really unusual. If I was being called into this group in particular, I would say, hey, you have a group of individuals that pride themselves on being free thinkers, and yet you're going to dictate and lecture to them. Might it make more sense to have them have learning experiences where they get to express their freedom of thought, where they get to feel like they're in control of their learning experience? The room already communicates. Sit down, shut up, and listen. And then let me notice a couple other things here for us. Ton of empty seats, not just in this row, right? But there's a ton of empty seats. And I bet, I can't see the front row, but I almost guarantee that row is empty, right? There's nobody sitting in it. Because if there's empty seats this far back, there's way too many empty up front. So one of the things that I love to do, if possible, is we want to make sure there's like just enough chairs for the number of people. And actually in a room this size, they could have done it. They could have actually right-sized the room. Even a little bit of standing room only would have been preferable to a bunch of empty seats. So empty seats tell people that like, oh, there's somewhere else more important to be, or wow, not as many people showed up as they had hoped or as they wanted. And if you're already dealing with a group that feels marginalized, that feels like left out or outsiders, this is going to just reinforce that point, right? Rather than actually elevating that, hey, wow, it's standing room only. This place is packed. Wow, this is the place to be. And they could have communicated all of that in that moment. Now, if this is what I do like right now though, is that the house lights are on, which means you've got eyes that are able to see the speaker, right? That we're saying, hey, whatever the light is on is what's important. And so if the light is only on the stage, you're saying that the audience doesn't matter. And when you put lights on, then all of a sudden people can be interacting with one another. You're literally shining the light on folks. Now this is, as I mentioned, my least favorite setup. I'll go back to one though that's a close second. Round. Okay, so these rounds. these are big rounds. These are like 6-foot rounds. You'd fit about 8 people at each one. I'd really love, if we're going to use rounds, I like to use them for meals, and we want to keep them a lot smaller, like 60-inch rounds, 5 feet, even like 48-inch rounds with like 4 to 6 people around them. It creates a lot more closeness. The idea of a round table is really smart, but because it's like, oh, we're all at the same level, right? Everybody can see each other, but 6 feet across, if you got a table of 8, it's actually much further than you think. And then when the tables are set up, but there's a stage and everybody's facing the same direction, you end up with exactly what you're seeing in this video, which is an empty chair here, because this person doesn't want to, nobody wants to sit there. Some folks kind of at the side, so you're actually not connecting with the people you're sitting with. You have a super inefficient use of space. Like, this is way too much space for, you lose density in the room. And then super awkward to get in and out of this room, right? If you need to leave mid-session to go take a phone call or go use the bathroom, anything like that, it's just a lot, right? You're going to be bumping into people. And the worst I see is when somebody has tilted a chair to save a chair for themselves, and now it's become a tripping hazard for the entire room. So I'd love to see smaller tables, or ideally, if I were setting up this room, and I think you could do it with the size of group that you have here. Once you get too much bigger than this room setup won't work. But what I'd really love to see is a circle, right? If I could say, a flat disc of people that are all kind of on the same level. Now, you may have a little bit of an elevated platform, again, with no podium on one side, but if you did a circle where there were lots of breaks, there was never more than 4 chairs in a row before there was some sort of aisle that you could get out. And you could do it just 2 to 4 rows deep in a circle. You could create a lot of community where every eye can see almost every eye, right? That you could literally see the other people in the room and connect with them. And you could create lots of different breakout configurations, groups of 2, groups of 3, groups of 6, groups of 12. All of this could happen really easily and dynamically in the room. You also could set up like high bistro tables at the back with no seats or stools or anything, but where those kind of like back row sitters, people get a little claustrophobic, can step out, can stage at those, and can still feel like they're in the circle, but they still also get to be a little rebellious and be outside the circle. But this group in particular, I would say, the more you can create an egalitarian feel, the more you can flatten the room, pun intended, and invite all voices, you're going to get a lot out of it, right? This is a group that I think would really benefit from a different room configuration to make their conference much more powerful and to accomplish the things that they are setting out to accomplish. All right, let's take a look at this one last clip. And this one in particular is the end of like a 2-hour presentation, it looks like. And they enter into a Q&A session. And we're going to talk about that. We're going to watch some of that and watch some of the things they do really well in the Q&A, some of the things that could have been done differently. But one of the things that I noticed, that I just want to notice again and point out, is the room configuration and the setup, particularly the stage in this case. So they have 5 experts, right, who are sharing, and yet they're broken up because they have a moderator who's standing in the middle. And so they can't interact. Like the group of 3 on the one side can't interact with the group of 2 on the other side. So there's really not going to be a lot of like conversation. And then you see also that they've got the 2 microphones that are in mic stands that they have to shift back and forth to get to the different voices. So just a little bit clunky, not as conversational as it could be. That setup, that dais setup that they have there is sort of your like dignitaries, presentation, a little bit roast setup as well. But either way, it is clearly like we are up here and you are down there. And so would love to see this move more to like a more casual chairs, whether they were low chairs or even like bar stool type chairs for the group, and then move the moderator off to one side so that the moderator is not above the experts, but the moderator is represents the audience in the conversation, right? And so I think but again, I always want to notice, like, what is the room, what is the setup telling us before anybody even opens their mouth? Let's take a look at how they handle, though, this Q&A as they're ending this session. By the way, there's an MC off camera, and so you'll hear a little bit of interaction with that Master of Ceremonies.
Now I'm going to ask Rick Hummer, since our time clock has gone to 0000.
We probably only have time for like one or two more questions, because
right,
I know
then.
you wanted to ask a couple questions before we closed, because dinner's from 4:30 to 6, and we're at about, what, 4:25?
So we're going to
really
have a couple more questions.
Yes.
And
So this is really good. They're having this conversation. A lot of times we tend not to want to do it because we'll feel awkward, or we'll feel like people thought we weren't prepared or weren't professional. No, they'll actually feel more comfortable that you're taking a second to recalibrate, make sure the time is being well followed. People want you to lead. They want the host to take charge, and then they don't have to guess. And then there's no like usurping leaders that try and step in and take over, although you see that sometimes happens in a Q&A. So I thought that was really smart for the two MCs to just confer real quick. And Mark, who was off camera, sounds like he's like, hey, this is when dinner is. This is why we want to get moving. Want to respect your time. Keep going. So that's really good. Let's see how the Q&A goes here in a second.
And then I'm not going to ask the panel any more questions.
Okay.
So up next.
My name is Tony Gilliversi. I'm from Abbotsford, British Columbia, and
Thanks for coming.
thank you. And my question
Love the
is
welcome.
for Bob, and it is for the FE Corps. I would like to know if there's anybody who's thought of or possibly getting a telescope of some sort that would be able to track the sun going around the flat Earth for 24 hours a day.
Well, that would be...
Oh, wow. Okay. That was great. That was a really, really good question. I mean, I don't know how good of a question it is in terms of the context of the value to the organization. But he may have been coached, and I don't know for sure, but he may have been coached. Like, say your name, say who the question's directed to, and then ask your question. Question, you can tell it's a question because it ends with a question mark. And some people will take the advantage of the microphone to give a speech and then pretend to put a question at the end. This guy, name, where he's from, and then who he's asking his question to, pointed question. It was really short. I think that was like probably under 20 seconds. And then now the panelists are able to respond to the question right away. So that was great. That was terrific. And again, it may have been coached. Like while they were waiting, that the mic runner is literally holding the camera and says, please do this. Say your name, say where you're from, who your question's directed at, and then ask your question, right? No speeches. And you can say that. It's not rude. It's not rude. In fact, it gives people makes them more comfortable, makes them confident that they're following the rules of engagement. And the rest of your audience, by the way, the other 119 people there are so appreciative when somebody just asks a question. So smart.
Okay. Low
Patricia,
tech.
we're going to finish these up. We've only got 3 questions.
Next question right here.
Oh, I like that. So the offstage MC, spoke up. Hey, let's finish up these questions. Might have been more direct. Say, hey, this is the last question, and then we're gonna go from there.
Dave Romero from San Diego, California. My question is, how do you think the flat Earth or the revelation of flat Earth might help with the science of cheap or free energy?
Good question. I don't know who would like to tackle that. I'm thinking DITRH, you may have some ideas about free energy. He's got some ideas about everything from what I've figured out.
Okay, so that was really great. Again, really well structured question. I do believe that guy was coach too. I mean, it just seems so similar to the previous one. And then for the on stage MC, because it wasn't directed, right? She knows who her panelists are. She also just has a very comfortable way about her. She was just like, hey, this guy could be the one to answer. Of course, he knows a little bit about everything. And, oh, he's really interested in this topic. So that she knew who her panelists were well enough to be able to refer the question to them. Otherwise, the panelists might have some false humility and be like, oh no, or maybe they think, oh, I've been talking too much, it's somebody else's turn. Or maybe they're not self-aware and they just talk too much and they'll keep talking. So I like that she took control and said, hey, let's have this person answer the question. I think that's the right move in that situation.
I'm not sure how to answer that question. There's other people that can answer that better than me, but I'm sure it has a profound effect.
Yeah.
And I just want to add one thing to the person that asked about the no forests on Earth. There's a video called Growing Megaliths from Living Stones. Very interesting. I recommend people look at it and decide for yourself what the heck is going on. Growing megaliths from living stones.
Thank you for that question. Up next over here.
That was so good. So I'm not sure. She may have been concerned he was about to go off on a rabbit trail, right? And so she just said, oh, thank you so much for that question. Next. So she uses her position to like, hey, this is where we want the conversation to go. Now, here's the problem. Mark earlier said that was going to be the last question, or at least I thought it did. So we're way over time at this point. And this is always a risky part of a Q&A session. By the way, this session's been going on for 2 hours. This is too long. This is way too long. But this is when my radar goes up and I start going, uh-oh, crazy Uncle Larry, right? We're about to get a question from somebody that's going to be way out of left field. This is why I detest Q&As, and I'm going to offer you an alternative here in a minute. But let's see what happens here with this next question.
Back from New Westminster, British Columbia, so Abbotsford, we got to hook up.
Oh boy.
So my question is, I'll try to narrow it down, but
he's not going to narrow it down.
Flat Earth community is going every which way. There's a lot of infighting. I mean, the common, our goal is to end the enslavement of humanity. And yes, it's great that we're doing more and more experiments to kill the globe, but I mean, the globe's already dead. My fear is, and I like what Daryl said, he kind of answered a little bit, but if I've got 30 people that have stopped living in the globe and now they're like, well, I don't care, I got to go to work, meaning I got to go on with my enslavement. My fear is that the world's going to wake up to flat Earth and the enslavement's still going to be there. Like, I know they say there shouldn't be leaders on flat Earth, but in my feeling, like, what do you guys think? There has to be some kind of leadership to focus this in one direction, and that direction is to end.
Okay, watch her body language. She is so tense about this question right now. Where over time, we've lost the plot, and there's still no question. There's still no question that's been presented. So this is rough. This is always hard.
The enslavement of humanity, better life for, our children and their children.
Well, when there's leaders, that leader can be taken out, and I think that's why we have a leaderless movement at this point, but we all have the ability to exercise leadership roles. So more people stepping up and being in that leadership role, I think, is very necessary, because people could easily fall right back, not us, but people can easily fall right back to sleep again because they've got to go make the donuts, as the expression goes. So I don't know what we do to change that other than wake up more people faster.
But how about going, I mean, my main thing is going in kind of one direction and not in.
And this is tough. Now the guys, so the mic runner should have physically taken the microphone away from him when he was done asking his question. I know that feels rude, but there was not a follow-up. There wasn't really a great question, and then there wasn't she was trying to not leave space for a follow-up, and yet he took it. So as a mic runner, you want to hand on the microphone, you want to give him the instructions, say your name, where you're from, who the question is directed to, and what your question is. Please keep it to 1 or 2 sentences. Hand them the microphone right when it's time for them to start speaking. And as soon as they're done asking their question, take the microphone back from them. If you just reach over, physically grab it and pull it, they'll give it to you. They'll just be like, well, I don't know, because you're the one responsible for that. But this guy's got the mic now. Guess what? He just started his own new session.
Every direction. Sure, we can all be leaders and we're going somewhere, but like kind of have some sort of a focus, and focusing on the enemy is what I'm saying.
Well, the enemy is always going to be there.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
Until the last day. That's
Carly
it.
Sunshine has a comment to that.
I would like to comment on that just a little bit.
Okay, so she is getting control back of the Q&A, and she's going to wrap it up here in a second. Yeah, so I think good start on that Q&A. The end got a little bit sideways, and that was, one was not ending the question when the other MC had said to. Overall, I'll tell you one of the things that I really like to do, if we really want to have a Q&A in the room, in a format like this, which I would do a different format altogether, but let's say that this is the format that I'm given. One of the things I'm going to do is I'm going to tell the presenters, I'm like, we're going to go for a little while. Let's say we're going to do an hour. We're going to go for about 40 minutes. And I want you to give us all your best stuff for about 45 minutes. But I want you to leave one great thing that you want to share at the end. We've got 5 panelists here. I want you to each do like 90 seconds or 2 minutes of like the most important thing you want to say. And we're going to finish with the last 10 minutes being you guys. But we're going to do our Q&A not at the end, but second to last. And we're going to only have 3 questions, and then I also want to frame those questions. Like, who has a question? Think about what your question is related to what Bill was sharing, what Judy was sharing, right? Like specifically to that. I also want to invite the audience, if they're going to ask their questions, I'm going to take like a minute to give them a chance to formulate their questions. Grab a pen, grab a piece of paper, and I'd like you to write your question down. And then if you could, go back and visit that question, and I want you to turn it into one sentence and use like a third less words. Just tighten that sentence up a little bit. And then the last thing is, ask the question is this valuable for most of the room? Would 80% of the people be curious about this question? If not, and by the way, we want you to have your questions answered. Our panelists are going to be here during lunch. We've put their contact information up so that you can reach out to them. But if you do have a question that maybe feels like a one-off, it's just for you, let's handle that outside of this. But if you have a question and you're like, hey, I think this would value the whole room, then we'd invite you to come up to the microphone. Our mic runners have some instructions for you before you present your question. Do that, then end with each of the presenters having a few minutes to give their best stuff. It means that you're going to end on the energy you want, and you're not going to end with the energy of some random question that's irrelevant. Like this happens so frequently. You end the session with this crazy question that's 2 minutes long because the person gives a mini speech before they ask their non-question. It's irrelevant to most of the room, and people are like, I'm hungry, I just wanted to go, but I feel rude if I leave. Right? You feel like we've just totally lost all the energy and that we've built for the first part of the hour. Overall, though, I thought there was some really good stuff that we could learn from this conference. Starting a conference with like a ritual or something that gets your people together, noticing what your folks have in common, particularly a feeling they may have, and how can we tap into that and take advantage of it. Maybe some ideas on how you can do room setup that are a little bit different. And in particular, I think it's super important, 2 things: flatten your room and make your room a round disc, right? That's probably the most important thing we can learn from the Flat Earth Convention. Hey, if you're with the Flat Earth Convention, I'm happy to give you a phone call or jump on a Zoom call to share some ideas on how I think you could improve your conference. Not sure if I'm your MC, but I'm more than happy to help. The other thing is, when you're doing a panel discussion, you're doing a Q&A, really think through that Q&A. Take control if you have control of it. And your audience will really, really appreciate it. Overall, hey, I am always impressed that people find each other in the world, and that as our world gets smaller, and as it gets, I'm going to say, okay, as our world gets flatter, right? From a hierarchical perspective, people are able to find each other. And this group found each other, and they put together a conference, a convention. What's funny to me is that they are outside. They're people who like actively say, I don't buy into the script that I've been given. And yet when it came time to design a convention, they stuck with the script that we've been given for a convention. And if you let your hotel planner decide how the room's going to be set up, how the chairs are going to be ordered, how the tables are going to be lined up, how the platform's going to be set up, who's going to be doing the AV, all of those things, you're going to end up with the same run-of-the-mill conference that you see. And that's what we saw. And yet we can invite our people to have a very, very different experience when we take control of all of those details, right? And in particular, I think I would have invited a question for this group about like what you came to learn to get out of this conference. I think folks are coming for lots and lots of different reasons. And just learning the facts of their worldview probably isn't the only thing, right? In fact, probably most important is that sense of community, that sense that they're not alone. And I think there's other ways that could have been experienced in the room, rather than just a lot of lectures that I happen to agree with, but instead creating conversations, creating ways for people to be involved and create advocacy. I think all would have helped make this a really much more powerful event. And so there's some things that I learned watching a few clips from the Flat Earth Convention. If you thought that was fun, throw something in the comments. Like, just be like, Josh, that was nuts. I can't believe you did that. Or be like, hey, I really learned a lot. That was actually surprisingly educational. But would love to hear your thoughts on what I learned and what I shared from the Flat Earth Convention. And then, hey, if you've got video of a conference or convention and you'd love to share that with me, for me to give you some feedback on how you run your events, I would be more than happy to do a reaction video to your event. And if you like this sort of thing, go ahead and subscribe. Would love to share more with you about how you can elevate your events.